Welcome. This is going to be, I hope, a little bit more fun than all the Zoom sessions you had to do today, Heather. I know what it's like. I've been doing them since we went into shelter in place last March.
Yep.
So I'm Paula Sheil, and I'm today with Heather Rule. Say hi, Heather.
Hi.
Okay. Heather is the
How's it going?
artist. And Val Acoba. Say hi, Val.
Hi.
And Val is a director, children's theater director, and we're going to be talking about their work today. And this is being recorded and will be broadcast next Tuesday, which is the fall equinox. So I have to ask you, isn't the fall equinox around the Moon Festival time?
The Moon Festival this year is October 2nd. And
so it's a little ways out.
yeah, it's a little ways out, but it's close. Okay, it's close. So
I think we were looking for some way to engage all of our different activities within a week, and you guys just didn't fit National Ice Cream Cone Day. So we picked the fall equinox. All right, so basically I'm going to start by showing everybody the book. And now when you see that, do you see it letters right? I always wonder about it being backwards. Okay. So this is very exciting because the story for me goes, I've known Val for, I'm going to say 40 years.
I think that's about right.
That's about right.
It's about right.
And my interest in theater has gone from being on stage to producing plays to now publishing this book of Heather's. And it was a conversation we had on the Miracle Mile. Very simple. We talked about, Val came to me and said, Heather is writing a book, or Heather is a writer. And I said, well, if she were to write stories based on her ethnic heritage, if she's got a idea like that in mind, I would be interested. Okay, long story short, here we are today. And I have been using this book as an example to all the other people who are interested in publishing at Tuleburg Press, because this is what I want. And I'm going to read this to sort of start the story here and why and what this really helps explain the mission of Tuleburg Press. So in your dedication, you write, Heather, this book is for my mother and my ancestors, of whom I am so very proud. Those were the brave souls who crossed the largest ocean to seek their fortunes. This is my family, who labored hard on railroads, in canning factories and butcher shops, served in the US military, and raised their children with a sense of honor. Thanks to them, because of them, I know that I stand on the shoulders of giants. So this to me is a piece that adds to Stockton history. So talk to me a little bit about just the stories in general, how you heard them, and how the book came about.
So the book came about when I finally returned back to Stockton about 5 years ago. I naturally went right back into youth theater, working with Val Acoba, who it turns out is a fourth cousin twice removed on my mother's side. We share the Lee family is the background from that. And those were the railroad workers from Astoria, Oregon. And growing up, always had the stories of like the moon goddesses and the white hair and things like that were always in the background when we would be celebrating these different holidays throughout the years. When after being one of the youths in Val Acoba's theaters way back in the 90s. So you've known Val for we were going for 40, then you could split that time, in 20 of those years I've known Val.
So you were actually in youth theater. Did you know you were related to her then?
We found out. So I went to Edison High School, and after I'd finished with being in band, I went into theater, and that is where we had discovered
that's what happened to me.
Yeah, we both discovered we had the same Aunt Minnie from Astoria, Oregon. And you know, Astoria, Oregon's not a very big town. It's a small town. So that's when we started tracing back, and we realized, yeah, we were cousins. And being a Navy brat, that was astounding to me, because I'd been all over the place. I was born in Virginia, lived in Hawaii, Washington, Alaska, and landed in Stockton and was surrounded by cousins, it turned out, especially in the Chinese community. So when I came back 5 years ago, after being, going to college, moving all over the place, we came back and we settled. My husband and I settled here. I got a phone call from Val and said she needed help with staging the kids in her to be a star theater out of Delta. And there I was helping out with the summer programs. And while there, I got to share with her some of the stories I had actually, plays that I'd written for the after school programs that I had the pleasure of working with in San Jose. So
Are
that was
some of those these stories here?
Yes, as a matter of
Oh.
fact, the dragon's gift and the water goddesses were originally with those kids.
Ah,
And the chance to come back and revisit them was a huge joy, because then that was some like bare basic theater with kids, which is
right.
which is something that
I'll show the
Yep.
illustration too, because it's just so wonderful.
Yep, that's Teal and Jefferson. The white hair is Jefferson, and Teal is his buddy, the dragon.
Mm.
And so I got to actually stage play that with a bunch of kids back in San Jose, and we're talking early 2000s. So once again,
Okay,
20
so
years.
everybody needs to realize too that these are the actual plays. So
Yes.
when you get the book, you basically can produce the plays therein, right? Because we don't have a
Please
way of
do.
distributing the actual plays.
Exactly. And one of the big things, like in theater, you'll see that there is a part for everybody. Okay. If there's one thing I always know what it's like to have there's no small parts, only small actors. There's a part in there for everybody. I always like making sure that there's big casts. That was something that I remember Val struggling with when we were in high school. You had 15 kids in a class, and all the plays only had 4 casted characters. And it's like, no, we need plays so everyone can get on stage, so everybody has a chance to stand there and say something. So that's something you'll see in each one of those plays, especially the New Year's play, since we have
In the
Zodiac
that's
animals.
everybody else.
Yeah,
right?
and then you have the different gods and what have you. So yeah, that's a really big casted one, but it's a fun one because everyone gets to play the different animals and stuff.
Well, we'll talk more about the book and about you too, but let's switch to Val for a second. And Val, talk about working with kids and why you feel it's important to put them on stage.
I have been working with kids for the 40 years that I have known you, and and basically I was a dance teacher working with kids, and I've always worked performing arts with a multi-ethnic type of aspect. And so I would be teaching, Hawaiian dance and Chinese dance and anything I could teach. And if I couldn't teach it, I'd drag someone in to teach it. Well, I had this opportunity to teach a theater class, and I didn't have a theater degree, but I was a dance teacher who had worked in community theater. And so you, amazingly enough, Paula, had workshops for teachers and theater workshops. Company 10.
Those were the days.
Yes, those were the days. And so that's where I learned basically how to stage plays with the help of a wonderful pile of kids that you had worked with also, those Company 10 kids. And they were very pushy children. and
They were all very, very bright.
Yes, bright and I had a lot of them. At that time I was teaching at Daniel Webster Junior High School, and I had some of them there, amongst them Reed Nimi and Jenny Fuji, and I know you remember these names. And
well, because now Shelley Ayers is my dean at Delta College, so
and Shelley Ayers
from the early days of theater.
A lot of this has to do with Shelley Ayers, believe it or not, okay? Yeah. Because she wrote her version of Witness for the Prosecution, and for the play festivals that you were putting together. And they were running around looking for a teacher to direct it. And they encouraged me to do this. And I said, well, I haven't done this. I don't know what I'm doing. And they said, oh, you don't have to do anything. We'll do everything, like kids always say. And so that was actually the first thing that I directed, okay? Although I had done choreography and stuff before.
Well, interesting.
What was your question again, Paula?
Well, no, you answered it. You answered it. You're letting me think about, because what's interesting is that Delta College used to have a very integrated and intensive ethnic studies program in the 70s, 80s.
Yes.
I mean, even the economics of Black culture. I mean, the ethnic studies was throughout the curriculum.
Right.
Okay. And then it all disappeared.
Yes.
And now everybody is clamoring, and our times have caused us to be much more introspective about the inequities in our culture, how important it is for people to have voice, to express themselves, because people who are not expressive are often oppressed.
That's
and
right.
A whole new way of thinking is coming up about white privilege. And when I think about children's theater, the old chestnuts come up. You know, you do the standard Western fairy tales.
Right.
And I, you know, if I see the Three Little Pigs again, it'll be too soon, right?
Yeah.
So how important was it for you to, you know, find your voice too in these
This is how I found my voice.
Heather?
Yeah.
And so both of you talk about that, how important it is to have, and I'm not even going to call it ethnic theater. I'm just going to say real theater that people
it's theater
find
for
themselves
all.
in.
Yeah.
Theater for everyone.
Right. Right.
Theater for all, theater for everyone. As an actress of 20 years, I had to make the decision that I had to write plays for me and for people like me and people who have the same similar backgrounds. I'm Chinese, Cajun, and Creole. Okay, no one is going to write my plays. No one is going to write a play for me. And so to make that decision, honestly, I was inspired by Tyler Perry. He made that decision. He was going to write plays and movies and sitcoms for people of his background, and that he knew and he could connect with, and he was able to do that. And that was the inspiration for going forward in writing plays, and, you know, me too, writing plays, writing movies, writing sitcoms, and
So you
stories.
saw yourself in the literature of your background.
Yeah.
Because I remember Maxine Hong Kingston saying she was so enamored of Little Women. And then there was this Chinaman, this sing-song Chinaman, and she said, and that characterization, that stereotype, threw her out of the book.
Yeah.
Because she didn't realize that she wasn't one of the Little Women.
Yeah.
So to talk about that, about seeing yourself in your own literature.
You know what? I got that opportunity when I wrote the water goddesses. So the folklore of the water goddess, you know, as an Asian American woman, to sit here and take the old story of the water goddess. You know, she's this beautiful goddess that the brother comes upon at the lake, and he captures her, and she has to give him this wish and all this stuff. That's the old version. I couldn't help myself. I wanted them to be warriors. I wanted it not to be so simple to just grab a goddess and keep going. If water goddesses are children of dragons, it's got to be a little bit harder than you just grab one, you know? So like in the play, you'll find it. We do this whole battle scenes where they have to answer questions, and, you know, and if the boy doesn't, he's going to get his head chopped off. And they're very bloodthirsty goddesses. And that was, you know, that was my thing. It's like all those strong Chinese women I grew up with wouldn't be that easy, you know, to persuade to get a wish from. So that was something that I felt like I saw myself in. It was like, yeah, it wouldn't be that easy. You'd have to answer questions. You'd have to really battle me for this.
Right. And they don't marry him at the end either.
No, that was the other thing.
Yeah, get the girl, get married. No.
Every single one, it's like, no, nobody's getting married in the end. A lot of these, like in the Monster of the Mountain, Lillian and the Monster from the Mountain, she basically saves the town by, you know, being loud. and following some of the traditions that we do now, setting off fireworks during New Year's, wearing red. That was the whole thing. But it took a little girl willing to stand up against this monster that traditionally shows up and eats the town. To
Tell
stand
her
there.
about Lillian.
Oh yeah, well, Lillian is actually my great grandmother that I named the character for. Lillian is named after my great grandmother. That is actually the family member we're related with. And then actually Jean, the dragon sister in the dragon's gift, is named after my grandmother. So I get to do that too. I get to see myself and also see my family in there.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Well, Val, you've always worked with kids, and you have always had a focus on Chinese American literature.
Well, actually, I'm also very into multi-ethnic casting, because I was in a lot of situations where young people would not get parts because, well, the play did not have parts for them, like Heather was talking about. And so before I had Heather's wonderful plays, I would multi-ethnic cast everything. I mean, I was the drama teacher that had the Black Macbeths, and I would switch the little Mexican shopkeeper and make him a Lao shopkeeper, things like that. And so
your Bye Bye Birdie had a slew of ethnic kids all over the place.
Right. So because I feel that everyone should have a chance to do drama. When I was a child, I didn't have a chance to do drama, and I felt that was wrong, and creativity should be encouraged, and creativity in theater arts and dance, performing arts should really be encouraged. And if it covered an ethnicity that wasn't your ethnicity, you should grab it and learn about it. And that's how people like Heather were taught drama. And you were talking about the resurgence of ethnic studies. A lot of these young people are ex-students of mine that have gone through Edison High School. Aldrich Sabak is very active in ethnic studies in Stockton, and I still call him my sweet Baloo, because he was my sweet Baloo. And Brian Batugo is very strong in the ethnic studies programs, and he is the student activities teacher now at Edison. These are kids I'm so proud of, just like Heather. And so they were taught that they could do anything, and they do.
Do you have any particular success stories of kids that might have zigged and you got them to zag?
Well, I worked, and Heather was in the program. I worked with the WorkNet program that did the plays in the park, and there were a lot of zigs there.
That's right.
There were a lot of zigs there. And although, I mean, they're not super successful. Well, okay, wait a moment. Carlos Manuel, okay? Carlos Chavarria from Stockton, who is the drama teacher the head drama coach at Contra Costa County. He's one of the people I worked with when he was a youngster too. So I feel he's very successful. Yeah.
I'd like to add that some of your zigs zagged back, and we actually have their kids in our plays.
Yes.
Oh, that's really the multi-generational reality of following in your parents' footsteps is really finally beyond the job they do. Just the things that you can teach them about community engagement, about the arts in general. I feel that same way, and I watch my kids do some of the same things in terms of community participation, having an active sense of what it takes to drive a community forward, all those things in addition to the arts. Lucian and Austin were interviewed earlier today over at Al's Comics, because we were making the multi-generational connection between kids who hung out at Al's and are taking their kids back now. And then Al eventually is going to turn the business over to his son. So
awesome.
They're very interesting to me too, that it's uh, so dynamic in Stockton, and that the effort to keep people here and provide opportunities for people where they can both work and be um, soul satisfied with a vocation or an avocation, or just something to entertain themselves, so they don't feel like they have to leave Stockton to pursue the arts. All those things are so important to me, and I don't know whether COVID is really amplifying it or just bringing it home. But boy, if it weren't for the arts in these last couple of months, I don't know what any of us would do.
Well,
Yeah.
you know, and you think about it, it's like we're coming back to, you know, when as a person who left and came back, I can
Hmm.
contest that that's what's going to make Stockton stronger. You know, us making the decision that we're going to build here, that
Hmm.
we're going to have the arts here, that we're going to work here and stuff. If anything, if COVID did anything, it made everybody actually stay home. You know, we are a community town and everyone takes off and runs in all the different directions. But now that everyone's starting to Zoom and realize that they can be here, you can work from here, you can be here and live in the town and participate in the community. I think that I'm crossing my fingers. That's what I'm hoping. You know,
Well, that
maybe.
kind of segues into the next thing about working, because we all have jobs. I'm still at Delta College teaching, though I am on sabbatical this semester. And Val, are you retired from teaching?
I'm
Long
well.
time.
I'm
I don't
retired.
know. I just think of all of us as kind of going on forever.
We're artists, okay? You don't
Yeah.
retire. You just
You never retire.
doing
But
what
I want to talk about the working now in terms of writing. So let's kind of bring this whole discussion back now to actually writing and what that's like in this environment. Because some writers wouldn't even know there was a pandemic. I mean, they're introverts. They're home with the door shut so they can concentrate. They don't know what's going on out there. What about you?
Um, I definitely know what's going on. The day job allows me to know that. I work at Person Centered Services, where I get to work and teach art essentially with people who live with mental and physical disabilities. They're part of the last group that will probably be allowed to come back to normalcy, as we would put it. And they're probably phase 4, if not later, and all that. So I know we were the first group to get on Zoom and start reconnecting with our people through here. So as a writer, I can take pleasure in knowing that I am at the forefront of how much life has changed, and be able to sit here and be a witness to how COVID has affected a lot of people and how they're living and making day-to-day decisions and things like that. So the writing is fascinating and good in a way where when I get a chance and I can actually get to it, I definitely have to be disciplined. I make sure I have time. I spend mostly my Sundays at my studio just hacking away and just trying to wrap my head around, how do you explain this? How do you explain what's going on right now in a play, in a film script, in a novel? And so then that way we have it for later, you know.
Mm,
We you,
witnessing.
yeah, we can live all, you know, that's I'm one of those where it's like, yeah, I have to witness it in order to later be able to reiterate it and share this down the line.
Mm. Are you working on a specific project?
No, it's all kind of coming at me in different ways and stuff. I came up, you know, there was an idea of doing a small play where people would give witnesses to what you've learned. You know, everyone's running around doing that where they're like, "Oh, I'm 5 months in and I've learned how to play the ukulele," and it's like, I'm so glad you've had time to do that. I've learned how to sew. I've learned how to sew a lot of masks. That's what I have learned,
Uh,
you know. And I've learned, you know, how to Zoom and how to connect with people without really connecting, and, you know, picking up that phone and calling people. I haven't called this many people in years, you know, but my phone's starting to overheat most days.
oh
You know,
no.
right? It's crazy. It's like, wow. And then, you know, at work I've got two phones and I'm Zooming. The running gag is, here comes Heather the octopus, you know, and I'm just trying to get through the day in text. So it's, you know, the writing is good. It's just trying to find that time. And because of Zoom and everything, it's very cranial right now. A lot of this is on your brain. How do I share this? How do I find this YouTube video and share this? How do I do these things? So,
do you think now the plays in the Great Chinese New Year's Race are all for kids? Are you interested in writing for adults?
I am very much so. I've got a whole bunch. I got a slew in the background, and I had actually started this year. We had the 100-year anniversary of the suffragette movement here in America, and I was actually called, speaking of ethnic studies, I was actually asked to write a play about the forgotten suffragettes. And that I actually got to put together and produce back in March. And the idea was to get it there, and then hopefully we had a couple festivals, unfortunately got canceled, but a few festivals that actually asked us to come and perform it. And I had the pleasure of learning about the Black suffragette movement and the Asian and the Mexican American, as well as the LGBTQ plus. We sit here and we hear the names of like Susan B. Anthony and so on, and we think it was just them, and it wasn't. It was a slew of people of every background who had something to say.
Who writes the history, right?
Yeah, and that's the history. And you know what? Even I had to throw in there were men. There were men who voted, especially here in the Central Valley. That was a huge push. There was a huge push of men here in this valley who wanted women to have the right to vote. It wasn't the guys in San Francisco. It was the guys in the valley who wanted it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So yeah, I've got tons of, grown-up plays that I would love to get produced. It's just the ball was going to get rolling this year.
And it will. It will. Val, you got something? Were you starting to say something?
Yeah. Heather's plays are amazing. She does a wonderful job with it. When you get to adult things, okay, you have to be, we write for an audience, and you have to sometimes be very careful about the audience that you are writing for, because Heather had a slight problem with her adult play because some people don't want to believe that they are minority suffragettes.
Well, we ran into a problem with, I apparently had done really well with my research. Yeah, I did really well with my research, and the unfortunate problem with the women's movement, with the suffragette movement, was it was incredibly homophobic and whitewashed. Nobody's surprised. Let's be real. We are in the middle of Black Lives Matter. We're in the middle of this big movement going on in our country. And back in March, think about that. This was back in March, guys. And presenting this and being like, there were these people who put together entire movements inside their states and were told to walk at the back of the parade. That was Ida B. Wells. Okay. You had Mexican Americans who were fighting the Mexican Revolution, as well as trying to make something happen in this country, having to go against federal government trying to shut down their newspapers. Right. You had Asian American women who were beautiful enough to be put in the parade front and center on a horse, but when the vote actually came, because of the Chinese, the against Chinese acts that were put into place, weren't allowed to vote after it was put through.
Wow.
And then
still walked.
They still walked, and they still marched, and they were still a part of it. And then you have the LGBTQ plus. They were front and center. They were the people actually next to Susan B. Anthony making this happen. There were tons of couples who were front and center and some of the biggest speech makers of that time, but they couldn't talk about their girlfriends and wives. And then here we are 100 years later, and it's still one of those moments where you're left with people looking at you going, maybe that's a little much. And it's hard because people have that image in their head for the suffragettes. They have like a Mary Poppins kind of thing. They think of the sashes, and they think of the all white, and they think of the cute little hats and the purples and the, you know, and the yellows and stuff. And it's a beautiful thing, but there's
It's a movement. It was a political movement
Yeah.
for righteous equality.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That involved everybody who had a way to manifest that or need to manifest that in their own lives.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
and that was the thing. And so everyone was, and I think that was the other thing for me. It was a way to also say we were there. We were there. It wasn't just your Mary Poppins suffragettes sitting there. We were all there. Okay. And like,
Great.
for instance, Lacey, our partner in crime, Lacey, she was asking me about what about Middle Eastern and what about Muslims? And actually they were here. They weren't as large of a group as they were in England. They were a huge movement for the suffragettes in England, you know, but once again, you gotta dig in, you gotta find that research, and you know, so.
Right. You just have to go back and recreate the history that exists because only one view of it has been presented.
Exactly.
Yeah, this is a huge time in our culture
Yeah.
for all of this. And perhaps COVID is probably the best thing that could have happened because of the introspection. It just forces you to stop your McDonald's life, you know, and a million served and find out, you know, exactly, you know, well, who is not being served. It's very interesting times.
And not all of us have, and that's the other thing right now, to know your audience and understand, to sit here and do it in a way where not everybody had the McDonald's life, you know, not everybody was served, and we all have these amazing, that's the other thing, we have these amazing stories to share, you know, that you can even find yourself in. That's the other thing I've tried to help people understand. Just because it's my voice and my background and the folklore that I grew up with, the story and the lessons still hold true. Right. Be a good person. Make good decisions. Be kind. You know, value real things and not just material things. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that this conversation was going to go where it went today, and I'm really grateful because I will probably be sharing this with faculty at Delta College, and I probably will push this video in lots of directions because it's got a lot going for it. So let's look at some of the kids on stage, though, and that'll maybe help us wrap up and kind of bring it back to the kids. So I will do the screen share now, and we'll go over here to your YouTube. There we go. Can you see that?
Yes.
Great. So let's just play a little bit of that. It's short.
Sweet happy old dear, bring in renew. Come hit that joy, come hit that joy. Sing happy new year, come hit that joy. Bring happy apples, the oranges too. Their colors bring us joy and good luck too. Come hit that joy, come hit that joy. Sing happy new year, come hit that joy. The dragon dances, the lanterns light, the firecrackers light the night. Come hit that joy, come hit that joy. Sing happy new year, come hit that joy.
The little one,
parents back there.
yeah, the little one was only 6 years old.
Yep.
What I saw the RTD logo in the background. Give me a little bit, Val, about what was going on there and why you are doing theater in those kind of situations.
Yeah, this was done for Art Splash, And if there should have been an art it's an annual event, and Joy Niece is in charge, and she gets all these groups, and they perform in different venues around Stockton. We also performed this dance well, we've performed it at several places because it's our New Year's dance, but we've also performed it at Yosemite Village, and we've also, we performed it in several places. I mean, also for the Chinese New Year's parades, which they didn't have one this year, but
Which didn't happen this year, no.
It didn't happen this year, but it was a previous year. The choreography on this, because I did this one, is kind of unique. Before I met you, I danced with the Chinese folk dance group of Stockton, with Bonnie Liu, who had, rest in peace, Bonnie, she has passed last year. And so the movement is all taken from traditional Chinese dance. And so it's, although if you notice that maybe one of the actors or dancers was part Chinese, but they all just got in there and did it and loved it. And a lot of times when Lacey and I do choreography, because we're both trained by Dorothy Percival, we have little mind farts in our brain that are things from snowflakes and flowers and stuff like that we put into the choreography. But we needed to have a fan dance, and hopefully we'll have more.
Well, great. I think that pretty much wraps it up for us. I'm very excited to be able to reconnect with both of you like this. It's, like I said, it's been really a learning curve for me too, with Zoom and with trying to push Tuleburg Press and The Right Place into the community still in this format, and to keep our mission agile, you know, and serve our community. And I think that our discussion today was pretty enlightening, and I appreciate your time.
Well, thank you very much, Paula. Thank you for
Paula.
allowing us to
So I'm gonna do a plug for the book too, because the book, The Great Chinese New Year's Race and Other Children's Plays, is available at Tuleburg Press for $12.95, and you can order it on our website. In addition, I do want to say that at the beginning of the shutdown, we prepared 100 activity packets for kids at Taft Community Center. Like, it was a third at the two housing authority projects, Sierra Vista and Conway Homes. And it included this book, and it included a book by Orlando Molina from his Rhinosaur series, his new book, Triceratops, is about a female dinosaur, Triceratops.
That's awesome.
And pencils and pens, etc. And we thought this was a perfect book to include because it's written, you know, in play format. We thought it could be kind of read in any order. It wasn't going to be one of those books where you have to start at the beginning and go to the end. Kids who could get into it could assign parts and read it out loud. And for adults reading this, they would find, like all good children's literature, it's just as entertaining for the adults, and they'll get jokes that maybe will go over the kids' heads. But that's what was really terrific about it for me. So Tuleburg Press is still selling and distributing this book for Heather. And I will close by saying, I hope you give us another one.
I'm working on it.
Good. All right. Bye. Thank you both.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.